In this video, I want to talk about iteration of sprite sheets in pixel art. So this is a character I made for a game that I'm working on. His name is Desmond. He's a lunchbox character. And when I've been working on this sprite sheet, I actually started with a front view. And as I have gone on, I had to do a lot of tweaking. I mean, originally I started out with a physical drawing, and then I honed Desmond out as I went. I based a lot of his design on like a jack-o'-lantern, also with a lunchbox, and I chose the colors yellow and red because they're known for being the most appetizing colors, and his hands are zippers, like on a lunchbox. So, yeah, this entire sprite sheet, I did not get it perfect on the first try. There was a large amount of iteration that I've gone through when I was doing this. The other thing is, when I get it into my actual game, video game, sometimes other issues would pop up. So, if you look at the sprite sheet, everything's aligned in a specific way for when the player hits a certain key. So I'm basically thinking of other considerations when I do that to make sure everything's right. Because if I had this sprite sheet here and this one is like the next, if you could see my computer mouse, it's like over right here. If you see my computer mouse, when you go from one to the other, you really have to make sure that each animation cell is in the proper position, or else it'll look off in your game. So I've had to do many tweaks. I've had to go back and forth many times to get it looking correct. But yeah, so this is like the vertical sheet, and the important thing to know about that is that some of them are for like purposes. Like I wouldn't work on a version like this for if I was like just going right off the bat, because you want to kind of test what it's going to look like before you put it into your video game. Although not all people will do that. You also have to make decisions like how many frames you want for an animation, how simple or how complex you want to make it to look like. There are other things like making sure that like every other cell, like the background is invisible. It's a transparent color, but as you see it now, it's just for working. It's just a way that I work, so I can tell if they're like to tell which cells are a part of what. In this, each animation cell is 32 pixels by 32 pixels, so I kept to that constraint. So I have another spreadsheet here, and I can't remember. This one's not animated. But when you look at it, I worked in a much different way when I was making this one. This is also this was originally the way that I tried to get it into. I'm using Godot for the engine, and when I did this, I ran into some weird issues. Particularly being when you make animations, it's much simpler to reference cells, going 0, 1, 2, 3, etc., rather than having to pick out the specific cell to work with. So, like for video games, it's much more simple to work with a single long vertical sheet, in my opinion, than this one, in which you have to really recall each type of frame. The other downside to this type of iteration, a benefit is that you can see everything side by side. The downside is when you get it into like a game, it was difficult to work with. And also, if I wanted to expand it, it became much more difficult. In which, if I wanted to expand it, I had to change a lot of other numbers around to get the animations to look correct. Because it was kind of weird if I would add into the end. So ultimately, if I added anything new at the end, it would go to the very bottom of the sprite sheet. So another important thing is I started with a black outline when I was doing all of this work. I think I do have it, or I'll show you the walk cycle. So I'm gonna play it. So you'll see here that I have the animation. So I have a whole nother iteration of the sprite sheet that I have animated. And originally when I was working on this, I started with one 32 by 32 cell at a time. Sadly, I did not save all of those. It kind of becomes a game of what you want to save, but my workflow was I had a different .asprite workspace open, and I had the individual frames, but I had this one as the main one. So each one is 32 by 32, so this is 0 to 32, this is 32 to 64, this is 64 to 96, this is 96 to 128, 128 to 1, wow, am I doing this right? 160, then 198, I'm going to mess the number up. I'm not counting in base 2, right? Was it 196? Or no, I'm messing it up. But the point I'm trying to say is that I was working, when I was doing these iterations, each in their own 32 by 32 cell. I wasn't working in this whole same thing altogether. So when it plays, I was able to view everything side by side, but I think if I was going to do it again, I would probably try to focus more on a vertical type sprite sheet with these alternating colors, because if you see this sheet, it can be difficult, and if you make a mistake, well, I'll put it this way. Sprite lets you export everything kind of like exploded out. So you could then put it into a sheet like I did here. But like I said, the problem with that was how I actually referenced everything in code. And I liked this a lot better, and that's what really worked for me. So the funny thing is, as I was going with the iterations of Desmond, I originally stuck to a more jack-o'-lantern-like style, but I ultimately opted to cut a few things. Particularly, if you look at this one over here, there was like a zipper part to his mouth around it, but I decided to cut that out because when I was doing animations for the game, it kind of became a lot to maintain, especially for animation. I'm not against that, and probably I could always add more detail, and it's always a balance game for how much detail you want to actually include or exclude, but this was the level of detail, and I had to go back and forth. Sometimes I liked the colors, other times I didn't. Sometimes I had to sit on it. You'll also see a little mistake here, but the important thing is that be opening to experimenting when you're doing the designs for your character. Here's another early design I did of Desmond, in which I was kind of thinking of Desmond as a paper bag rather than a lunchbox. And what I was going to do is I was going to have the scare was going to be like a bag comes up, and those party things that like have like those rolls that come out. I was going to kind of use that, and probably to this day people may say that this probably would have been a cooler design. Well, I don't know, maybe not cooler, but I kind of wanted to stick to the other one because it caught attention. I feel like it catches people's eyes better. I feel like it's easy to see the player. I feel like it's what I wanted to go for, considering the lunchbox and food aesthetic. So here, I'm trying to think what this one is. Okay, so I think this iteration was just me showing everything side by side before I actually did the animations. So yeah, it's just everything side by side. Probably would have made it vertical, but who knows? Different artists would probably have different methods for how they do it. I know there's some artists who would probably just like to experiment and have everything on like a same sheet all around rather than having to focus on hard cut cells. But like I said, whenever I worked on any of these, I was always focusing on a 32 by 32 pixel area. So you'll see here, the funny thing here, I was originally going to make an animation for Game Over, and instead what I ended up doing here is I just had a single 32 by 32 area that I wanted to show the single Game Over sprite. And an interesting thing is that you'll see that there's not any animation actually here. And the reason why I don't have it here is because um, I actually used code instead to show the animation, which when you lose, Desmond spins around, and by taking, I believe the first cell, like this cell, this cell, this cell, that cell, this cell, that one, that one. And when I put them all together, it's kind of like Desmond spins around, then it shows his game over animation. And I thought by doing that, I ended up liking it. I could have made a different one, and probably for enemies and food enemies, I'll probably make custom animations for that. Um, I know it's kind of weird because I guess you could say that like it's sometimes very hard for me to cut off or like when to stop doing actual animation. If you look at all these iterations that I have done, I spent a lot of time doing all of this, and there was definitely enjoyment to it. Sometimes I was a bit frustrated because I'm used to drawing, not doing pixel art. So when I did this, there were like some frustrations when I had trying it, because I guess you could say I was trying to do art. I was trying to do pixel art into a medium rather than in the medium. And the real big thing I learned about iteration of sprite sheets is you can have an idea in mind, but enjoy the pixel process, um, because it's much different. And obviously, many artists would probably know this, that when you're doing this, it's a lot. It's just obviously nothing could be truly one to one. Even if you draw in a really large DPI with pixels, digital art is just a different beast. And the funny thing is, if you do look at my channel, you'll see a lot of my other drawing videos. I think the whole irony of the whole situation is that I was actually originally a little bit of a pixel artist back in 2010, 2011. And yeah, I did a lot of work, so to say. Um, so yeah, iteration. There's so many ways to do it. I really like using a Sprite for doing it. I'm not sponsored by them or in any way. It's just a tool that I ended up really liking. Perhaps like even graphic scale could be good for anyone. But yeah, there's a lot of iteration you can do for a single sprite sheet. And perhaps because it was my first time doing this, it ended up taking a lot longer than I normally would have. I guess you could say the other thing I learned was the real benefit of a black outline, and also putting it into your program to learn how it looks, and in the game world to see how it looks. But if you like the video, please like it. If you like my channel, please subscribe. And if you have any questions, please ask in the comments. Yeah, I kept the colors really simple, and I didn't add too much texture. I guess you could say that was mostly because of animation. I feel like you could always add some more details, but if you want to add a ton of detail, probably want to focus on the outline first, hone that, get the outline ready, all good, then you could then kind of like lay in more detail and coloring. Yeah, coloring. The other weird thing that I wanted to mention about when you're doing iterations is that sometimes colors look different on different monitors, and it's really weird because I guess the other thing you have to think about is your target audience. They may be colorblind, and there are various levels of colorblindness, so sometimes you may want to use patterns to kind of differentiate certain things. So yeah, there's a lot a lot of rules, but yeah, I hope this video helps you. If I had to give a solid time for how much all of this took from probably start to end, I probably spent about 6 to 8 hours doing all of this, and it was my first time when I was doing a lot of this, so that's probably why it took as long as it did. If you have more experience, maybe it won't take that much time. The other thing is I like it to look good. I hope it looks good. I feel like it's something that I'm happy with. The other thing is I guess you could say don't try to do it all in one day, because it could you don't want to burn yourself out, and you may also want to sit on different designs for a night or two before you go forward with it more, because if you go further in, if I would have gone further in with this and I would have had to have changed it to match, say, the colors of this, I would have had to do a lot of reworking. It wouldn't take that long, but it would probably take maybe a half hour to change all of the animation cells and all of the other cells to match those colors. So yeah, if you have any questions, please ask in the comments. Yeah, I hope this video helps kind of explain some of the process. A little while ago, I kind of released a bunch of videos on pixel art. I do want to say that a lot of those videos I actually made in December, and I didn't release them until June. That was a bit of a mistake on my end. I was making a lot of content, and it was kind of like, it was in the back of my mind to release it, and like, I can't believe I didn't release it. And then I like found it on my computer and was like, did I put this up? And I didn't. So yeah, if you have any questions about pixel art, you may want to look at other resources, because I'm not a professional. There are other people who are incredible pixel artists, and it's art in itself, unlike drawing, just because you really have to work with the pixel nature, and it's a very interesting medium that I feel like will always have. There's always something new to learn, is what I would say. But yeah, thank you for listening. Bye.